views and opinions you are about to hear are of the hosts and do not reflect the management of CaveRadioBroadcasting.com.
Good afternoon and welcome to Down the Rabbit Hole. Today's Thursday, August 4th, year of our Lord 2016. You're listening to a Gen Pop Media production. I am here with the panel as usual. We have a new guy over there. Who's the new guy running the board?
Yeah, who is the new guy?
My name is Roger.
Hey, what's up, Roger?
Nice to meet you, man.
Nice to meet you.
Did you pull the short straws? You're in here with us today? Or?
Just covering when I can.
Gotcha. Well, welcome. Feel free to, if anything we talk about on here sparks your interest or you have an opinion, please feel free to pipe in. You're more than welcome.
Much appreciated.
You have to, actually.
Yeah, it's mandatory.
Yeah, you have to.
Or we have Howie
we'll
get
make
tough
funny
with
of
right.
surfing.
Or was it I feel like it was in a Pulp Fiction, the guy in the back seat, man, I don't even have an opinion.
There you go.
Yeah, but we all know how that worked out for him.
That didn't work out so well.
Oh, man, you shot Marv in the face.
And Kat brought a friend with her. So, Kat, why don't you introduce your friend?
Well, this is my friend Kevin, and I met him years and years ago. We've been great friends, and so he's got a history with this stuff. In fact, he tried to show the truth to me about 10 years ago, and I mean, we probably didn't talk for a good year or two because of this stuff, because I thought he was nuts. And so I had to swallow my pride and ask him for forgiveness last night.
Nice.
I looked at him across the kitchen table and told him what was going on, told him about the show, and he's just looking at me like, our friendship almost ended over this, and not only do you now believe this stuff, but you're on the radio, like, talking about this.
Tasted sweet, didn't it?
Crazy, isn't it?
Well, he was nuts, and now you're also nuts.
Right,
Yep.
yeah.
That is correct.
That's the difference, yeah.
Well, if enough people go nuts,
right,
then the ones in the minority will be the ones that are nuts.
We might actually fit in.
Exactly.
Kevin's also a famous stand-up comedy guy.
I wouldn't say famous, but
Famous.
He's famous.
been doing it for a long time.
He's got a fantastic
He's got a good
radio voice.
radio
Listen
voice.
to that.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's great.
Booming
Dang.
bass.
He does backup announcing for the Detroit Tigers. He does football.
I'm the voice of Wayne State men and women's basketball.
For now.
Nice.
Till this broadcast.
Until this. I didn't say that.
Yeah, you're either going to get demoted or promoted, but
You're like,
nothing's
hey,
gonna
by
stay
the way,
same.
we don't need you anymore. So
So what's up? What's shaking, Hoops?
God, just, a lot for me. Like, I've had an incredibly eye-opening week. Stuff that I was working on, prepping for our next two shows. I'm not going to be able to hold it back. We're going to have to talk about some of it today.
of course.
But I'm going to put it in an organized format for the next 2-3 shows. I think I sent you guys over some of those topics I wanted to cover. There's something inside of me. I can't explain it. It is a kind of a little bit of a pit in my stomach, and I think I know exactly why. Finally, I've been talking to you guys about that, feeling all disconnected over the last few weeks. That is not the case anymore. So we'll get into that.
That's good news then.
Yeah.
It is. I mean, to have the what's the word I'm looking for? The more understanding you get in a lot of ways, yeah, that's a good thing. But when you understand what it is you are looking at, it's not fun because it does not say anything. There's not a lot of hopeful stuff about this human life we have.
Oh, you're pushing 50. Haven't you had enough fun already? I know I did.
Yeah, your life's
I'm not
over.
Dude, I
What
don't
do you
think
care?
there's any shortage of fun in this room.
That's
why one of the questions we had a few weeks back is, would you rather have found out the truth of Jesus Christ, like on your deathbed? And I was sitting there going, the deathbed thing would have been nice. But definitely had enough years with booze and just every possible, you guys know what
Just use the word debauchery, and that just kind of sums it up. So
I definitely, it's not like I'm wondering what that life was like. There were a lot of fun parts about it, no doubt. But ultimately, not very fulfilling.
There you go.
that's really profound, actually.
How are you, Dave?
I am very busy, but I'm good.
Yeah, you've been slammed with...
Just totally hammered. Not in a good way. So yeah, busy, very busy. So
Did we already ask Kat how she's doing?
No. How you doing, Kat?
I'm doing great.
Good.
Doing good.
All right.
Good.
That was a nice answer.
rock
Kat, we're
and
sitting
roll.
here
Look,
I didn't
he's
even
got
want
Where's
to-
Howard's? Oh, he's got sandblast
You know
timers
what?
for
I
Kat.
speak when I have something to say, and I stop speaking when I'm done.
Are those like incremented in time? Or are they
Yes.
just color coded? Or are they?
They're different amounts of time.
Are they really?
You know what? I want to take a reader poll or a listener poll. So I want to ask all two people out there who are listening,
What if
who
it's a
talks
tie?
the
What
most
if it's
out
a
of the
tie?
four of us? It's not me. I know you talk a lot, but you're supposed to.
Yeah,
What
I
if it's
probably
a
talk
tie?
the most without
Well,
a
you're
doubt.
supposed to, right?
But
I
I'm
mean-
I'm the only one that has all week to be researching this stuff because this is just what I do full time. So, yeah.
Hmm.
How you doing, Howard?
Busy. It's been a trying week, but it's getting better, right?
Sorta.
Every day that I walk out with a smile on my face, it's a victory.
There was someone. We touched a few weeks ago on prophets, modern day prophets. Are there modern day prophets? Which I fully believe there are.
I do too.
And I'm now at the point where so many things written in the Bible, I've come to see what we were taught actually was the exact opposite of what's in here.
Okay, when you say prophet, let me ask a question. When you say prophet, when you say modern day prophet, do you mean someone like the prophets of the Old Testament who are actually being spoken to directly by God? Or are you talking about someone who can take everything into account and make accurate predictions?
No, that's a mystic, a prophet.
That's a researcher, actually. Yeah. I would put myself in that category. No, I'm talking about prophets that have some type of special communication. It doesn't need to be a visitation by Jesus Christ or an angel. It could be people that feel they are prophets. Some have visions. Some have out-of-body experiences. And I used to say I believe that they believe it happened.
Gotcha.
And I'm sure, of course, there are hoaxes out there. There's no doubt about that. But, God said, he didn't say, don't listen to any prophets because there aren't going to be any more. He was very clear in saying, don't be fooled. Listen to the ones that are couched in what my original words had to say. They're going to be here. Don't get fooled. Don't be deceived by them. Don't be led astray by them. And if there weren't any prophets, I think he just would have said,
There are no
Jesus
more
Christ
prophets.
is the last messenger
one,
we're sending until he comes back. That's not what he said at all. And the more time I've spent in this, this field, if you want to call it that, the more real the spiritual world becomes, and the less real this physical world is for me. And I think they are interfacing with people constantly, both sides. And it's not like there's one God and one Satan that are operational here. Each of them literally have millions, probably billions, and perhaps even trillions of sentient living forms working beneath them, helping to accomplish their ultimate goal. And Satan has a very different goal than God. We tend to ascribe everything to one of those two people,
right.
But Satan is not omnipresent. He can't be in 50 places at the same time. I do believe God, however, can be. Satan counterfeits that or overcomes that just by the sheer size of his military structure at the end of the day, which is one of the topics I wanted to get into, is break down how all this deception is being pulled off. Why? What are the spiritual elements behind it? What are the human elements behind it? Because this incorporates vast sections of the world as we know it and a world that we can't see so easily. And the more I look into it, the more real it feels to me. So, what was your question?
I don't remember. It was about prophets. Thank you.
Oh, prophets,
about
yeah.
prophets.
But when you say, now, some people, when they hear the word prophet, they think a predictor of the future. That is, that is not actually technically what we're talking about here. A prophet really is a messenger. And sometimes they are not talking about what is happening in the future. Often, essentially any message that is coming from the heavenly powers at work in this world, if you're someone that's been chosen by God, and I think we've all been chosen on different levels, but you'd have a hard time convincing me that there are not certain people that he literally is handpicked to do something special, to go out and say something special about what they've seen. These are the people I'm talking about. I am not putting myself in that category whatsoever. I'm talking about people that have the types of visions where they wake up in a cold sweat and they've got their hands over their face and they can't move for 3 or 4 hours because of what they just felt. Now, we've all had nightmares. I've never had a nightmare do that to me. And then these people followed up with a 180-degree complete change in who they are and what they're saying. And if you understand... Yeah, let's get all phones on buzz and all buzzing phones off the table.
Nice ringer, by the way.
Thank you.
What was I saying? Prophets, something. Where was I going with that? See how Satan works?
See that?
Exactly. Was it? Do you think it was actually Satan that called him?
It's definitely.
Who knows?
Judging from the ringtone, probably. Sorry, Roger.
That's okay.
That's what I do.
So the people that these people come out the following day, and they start doing something which ultimately will lead to their social ruin, because they come out and start talking about the realities of Jesus Christ. Now, either hundreds of millions of people suffer this exact same mental disease, which the DSM-4 has not talked about, which Diagnostic and Statistical Manual on Psychological and Psychiatric Diseases, or they're really having this experience. And as someone that has essentially had their social circles abolished, their dreams of their worldly life completely wiped out by being open to some of this, that I can understand. There's no money in this. There is no glory. It is not fun to be the minority, oh, that dude's a Jesus freak, or whatever, terms that we put on people that talk about these things. And if you think about it, if I go out talking about how real Santa is, no one's going to get upset with me.
Right.
Why is the world so up in arms if you bring up another potentially, now I do not believe in any way, shape, or form there's anything mythical about Jesus. I think he was a very real person. He was the Son of God.
It's been documented.
He did die on a cross, and he was resurrected. There is just no doubt in my mind that happened. Not because I'm trying to fill some hole in my heart or trying to, find hope because I had a bad month at work.
Evidence that substantiates it.
But it goes even further than that. It's like, at first, it's like reading about love. You can read all you want and have people describe what it is and how real it is, but until you feel it, and have ever been with someone where you have that feeling of the feeling I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I know Dave knows.
No.
Well,
why are you so positive in Dave's marriage and not mine?
Well, because Dave talks about it all the time. I'm sure you know too. I know I'm in big trouble when I get home, right, girlie? Yeah. So, until you feel it, it's just a cold, clinical, sterile piece of information. But when something...
Yeah, you can imagine. I got you. You can absolutely imagine what it's like to be in love. But if you ever end up in love, everything else pales in comparison. It's not... You're like, I thought I was in love then. What a moron.
Yeah.
I hear you.
So, I think these prophets feel something more... there is something more going on than they tuned into the Alex Jones show, or they happen to see some secret documents, and all of a sudden they make a leap to oh my gosh, Jesus Christ is real. He is about to come back. There's something way deeper going on, and I'm going to try and show that, not on this show, but over the next 2.
Can I say something when you use the term prophet? Flip it. Go ahead. When you use the term...
You're already using some of your sand time.
That's fine. When you use the term prophet, I have to respectfully disagree with you that these people are, in the biblical sense, prophets, because when God picks a prophet, he shares a message for his entire church to hear. It's not like just
How do you know
little
that?
Pockets of...
First of all, where did you get that information?
The Bible, the Holy Bible.
Show me I'd like to see the passage.
Okay. But I'm not saying that these people aren't having these experiences, but to call them prophecies, I feel that that's dangerous. I don't, because God is not going to reveal himself just to some people and not everyone. He's going to reveal himself to all of his children if he has something he wants them to say or do. And you can learn that by looking at the prophets in the Bible.
Well, then why do you bother evangelizing to anybody if he's going to just reveal himself to everyone himself?
Because he uses... But I'm not a prophet. I'm sharing the good news. I'm not advancing the church's agenda. I'm not suggesting that we all do something. If you want to call Billy Graham a modern-day prophet, I would say, yeah, for sure. God used him to spark a revival that this country needed. But I wouldn't say that somebody, who thinks that, Jesus is going to touch down in September. No, we don't know the day, the time. Jesus said, I don't know the hour, but...
Well, maybe when he said that in 33 AD, he didn't. But perhaps now it is known, and God is... Look, I'm not coming out here and saying that this is locked down. I already said I'm sure these are hoaxes. And I don't want you to confuse prophecy with the prediction of the future. I'm talking about messengers of God. You're a messenger of God, whether you realize it. Just for you didn't start. It didn't begin with you after some vision, after some materialization of some spiritual entity in front of you saying, "Hey, God wants you to do this."
It was a miracle. Yeah.
But it did take God's touch.
Yeah, for sure.
And
for sure.
The Bible, from the days of Moses, actually from the days of Adam and Eve up through at least the last book written in the Bible, which we believe was the book of Revelation, he is taking people on tours, giving them visions, giving them out-of-body experiences. And I would never sell God short and say he's not doing that anymore. And I certainly would also look at what's written in these ancient texts. He never picks the logical... He doesn't pick the president of a country. He picks a schmo. Mm-hmm. And he has a plan. There's a reason that there are going to be 144,000 sealed. Mm-hmm. These people are going to do, in a matter of a few years, what organized religion has not been able to do in 2,000 years, and that is get the word about the truth of what's really happening in our world, our existence, to every single person on the planet. And I would never discount the whole group, nor would I count in the whole group just because you claim you are a prophet. But I'd make a pretty good sized bet that I've probably now seen maybe 50 or 60 of them this week. Just on a macro level, I'll say I think some of them are BSing. Some of them might be adding in their own stuff. But I will also bet that some of them had real experiences. And until you've heard them, how can you comment?
Wait, I feel like you're being very defensive. I'm not attacking you. All I'm saying is I'm talking about the word prophet in the biblical sense. I'm talking about God using people to advance a message for all people. That's what he used the prophets in the Bible for. I'm not saying that these guys haven't had visions. Think of Nabil Qureshi. He said God gave him, 3 dreams and a vision. I believe that because God was trying to communicate something to Nabil. He was showing up to Nabil. But he didn't give him a message to take to the world that he's, I mean,
but
he wants Nabil to preach
how many
the good
people
news,
here have
but-
heard of Nabil outside of this show? Raise your hand.
Right,
See-
but is he a prophet? Is he a biblical prophet? No, he's not prophesizing. He's just sharing his story.
Yeah, correct.
And
He's
he's sharing the
witnessing.
good news. He's right. That's what I do. I witness. I share my testimony. I'm not saying anything that's not in the Bible. I'm not predicting the future. I'm not saying the writings on the wall. I'm saying, yeah, it sure feels like we're living in end times, but I don't know. Because in the Bible it says only the Father knows the time. Now, does he say we'll know the seasons? Of course. So I think you're being defensive. I'm not trying to discredit these people. You're right. I don't know anything about them. I haven't heard their
Yeah,
story.
we'll have to see what Dave's
But
research
I'm
is.
just saying, if you want to, the term prophet, like
See, you're going
I'm
off
talking
of
like from the Bible.
your-
That's what I'm going off of.
the
Bible.
definition of the word prophet as the world has taught it to you, and that is not
As
actually.
the Bible is presented it. That's what I'm not looking at the world. I'm looking at the Bible. I'm looking at all the prophets in the Bible. I'm saying those are not if those were biblical prophets, then I believe God would give them a worldwide stage.
Which
That's all I'm saying.
is the internet.
Yeah.
Well, but I mean, do you think that people
Someone
What I
that's-
think is pretty simple. The definition of prophet is also very simple. And I think it's absolutely possible because really all it entails is a message given directly to a person, making them a prophet, from God to deliver to mankind.
right? But
So this is pretty simple. So this could be, they could absolutely be walking around, and the world stage is the internet.
maybe, but
if you're
I'm
waiting for one guy to have the world stage to tell everyone about God, he's called the
well, I
Antichrist.
understand that, you guys.
And
Okay, well, I just respectfully disagree. I'm not saying you guys are crazy or wrong. I just disagree.
but,
have
but
a
I
different-
still don't know what part you disagree with.
I don't think that these 62 cases. I don't think that's 62 prophets. I don't.
I agree with
think-
you there.
I think
Yeah.
that
Do you think at least one of them might be, or is?
maybe if he is, we'll all hear about it. The church in Turkey will hear about these stories. Do you see? God will give.
Well, you're putting your own personal beliefs on how you think this would work. Where are you getting
the Holy Bible, because every time God used a prophet in the Bible, he used it to speak to the world. He used them to speak out to the nation of his children.
So in your mind, in the picture in your head, you're viewing that when, let's say, Jeremiah is talking to King Jehoiakim, that every single person in Israel
that's how you pronounce that.
is gathered around listening?
I believe
Heck
he.
no. I mean, a lot of these things that happen were only known by just a few people, and it's only the story that has been carried on and passed along. That's why we even know what we know, because we weren't there.
Right, but that information was given to those people to give to the people of God. And that's what they did. They delivered. Moses was a prophet. He gave the directives to the people of Israel, the whole nation of Israel. Now, did they all listen? No, right? But they at least had the opportunity to hear it.
Yeah, there's nothing new
I
under
don't
the sun.
understand how you can make a judgment on whether someone's a prophet or not without hearing what they have to say. I'm not saying that I agree or disagree, but
And I said that earlier.
But the lines that this is going along, I don't know how you can decide whether he's a prophet or not until you hear what David will have to present in the next two shows.
Hey, look, I didn't say. All I said was I get nervous when I hear prophet, because we're supposed to watch out for these things, and because I get my worldview from the Bible, and I look at the prophets in the Bible, and I see how God worked with those prophets, and giving somebody a story that 1,000 people watch on YouTube. That God is not weak. God is going to use a story like that.
Well,
for
hang on.
hundreds
Okay,
of
you're
thousands of
making
people,
up.
right?
First of all, where'd you get 1,000 people?
Well,
what about
I'm-
someone that has 6 million views? Or does that make him more likely to be a real prophet?
Don't
You know,
you think that if God has a message, he wants all his kids to
if
hear it?
Beyonce puts a tweet out tomorrow, she's going to have an even bigger audience. Do you
Why
think
does God
she's of-
deliver prophecy to people?
to warn?
Right.
He
And
always
so,
says, "I will warn, and I will warn, and I will warn." So why don't you think we'd get a warning?
to warn and to also get them to do things, right? Okay.
Yeah, be
so why
prepared.
wouldn't he want everybody to hear the message? Why would he give someone that inspiration to put it on YouTube and get 6 million hits and not 600 billion hits, or however many people there are in the world? Do you
Well,
see?
because he understands our world has changed. We've proliferated into a world that has over 500 languages, and if you include dialects, now we're talking 4,000. Our social upbringing has us in division against people that are of the opposite color, the opposite nationality. There are many things that divide us that were not his creation, but were put here by our enemy. And he has got to find a way around that. No longer does one man of God have the world stage, nor do I think he ever did. Because even in the times of the Old Testament, approximately 25% of the world believed in a God, the Creator. So there was still 75% that had no knowledge of this. And we're looking back as if everyone knew this back then, but they didn't. And so...
Right, the Bible tells an important perspective, but it only tells one perspective.
Mm-hmm.
The perspective of a Christian.
He makes a lot of promises in there. He says,
children.
I will send warnings. I will send messengers. I will send... I don't think he's going to go back on that. And
Well, he also says, your sons and daughters will prophesy. I mean, men will dream dreams. I mean, this is a very broad. I mean, your sons and daughters, not, that's pretty.
Look, at the end of the day, you can't go wrong if you simply limit yourself to what's in the Bible. But when I start to aggregate stories where there's a 9-year-old girl in Japan who's been drawing paintings that are selling for 7 figures since she was 5 and apparently got a tour of hell and heaven. And what she draws that no 5-year-old could have ever imagined or seen, nor have some, I think, God-inspired talent to draw something that is so stunning people are willing to pay hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars for this. What she can't say vocally, she puts in paintings that's echoed perfectly by a 17-year-old girl in Peru that had the same experience, by a Hezbollah frontline fighter that had the same experience. These people are coming from completely different backgrounds. They're not in touch with each other. They're not coordinated in any way. And they're all saying, by and large, the exact same story. They're all saying, I do get nervous about date setters too, because I think if you are really in touch with the positive spiritual forces of this world, not to date set. So when someone starts date setting, I start.
Well, then it's like
it's a raised eyebrow. I'm still going to listen to them, but I'm not jumping in like some wet behind the ears little naive kid. Oh, it must be true. So
it certainly needs to be tested. That's for sure.
I threw out some general numbers that were pulled from just my anecdotal memory of my memory of all the anecdotal examples that I've looked at. But there is a clumping, there is a congruence where I'm going to change what I said, because I had said it seems like 50% of these people that claim to be prophets are saying the same story. But after I've actually been in it, it's almost 9 out of 10 are saying something identical to each other. It's the same story, and all of them, some do throw out dates. They're saying the same thing. They're not coordinated. How could this information get into their head? And there is an outlier. If you look at statistics, if we were to plot this on a graph, it'd be a hyperbolic curve. The vast majority of this crowd, which is not a big crowd to begin with, and I will try and plot this so we can see how these numbers spread. But it's like a bell curve. The vast majority of them are 90% of them are in a space where they're saying the exact same thing. And that is that Jesus Christ is about to come back. And we're not talking, sorry, but this is not me talking. This is the accumulation of what their voice is, if we're to put it into one voice. And that is, we're looking at months, maybe years. But this is on our doorstep, and it's now. This is going to be in our lifetime. This is going to be something that all of us have to deal with. if we're talking about what all these seemingly uncoordinated people discuss. They also talk about the absolute and utter, just when you've got men, women, and another thing they do, the similarities between their stories are so statistically, for instance, 9 out of 10 of them shouldn't be crying while they're talking about what they view in hell. But why? There are things that are going on that I think can actually be analyzed. But it ultimately boils down. You'll have a feeling in your heart. You'll just have a feeling, is this guy telling the truth or is he not? And like I said, I would never put them over what's written in this book. If it does not coincide with what's written in the Bible, I don't think God would. I don't think he's going to make that mistake. That to me sounds like a counterfeit. But when it dovetails perfectly with what was predicted in this, and all of a sudden there are people in droves. I mean, Muslims converting to Christianity, scientists at CERN converting to Christianity, people having the very visions and dreams he predicted would be happening. And you can get on the largest library in human history to go verify this for yourself. Yeah, like all libraries, there are going to be some junk books in there. But I'm not saying put your whole belief system on a junk book. Look at all of the information and just be convicted by it. Let your heart tell you what is true. You will know. And I do believe that there is some sort of amplification of the spiritual war that has been going on since the beginning of time on levels that just the fact that I'm here even talking about this is proof enough for me personally. That doesn't mean anything to you guys. I know who I was before all of this. And when I hear the same story coming from former business people, former CEOs, former scientists, mothers with little children that have never even been to a church, and they're all saying the exact same thing. They all describe Jesus Christ, little details about him that the Japanese girl and the Peruvian girl, they couldn't have coordinated on this. And with 50 other people, they're all saying these little minute details that are identical across when they describe both heaven and hell. One of the ones I discussed with you, Catherine, is for whatever reason, when someone's giving a tour of hell, it typically comes with a tour of heaven. If you are one of the people that has been chosen to be given one of these dreams. And I'll tell you one thing, if you go searching for those answers, God has made it so that anyone in the world does have access to that information if you look for him. But if you don't, I don't think someone's going to come on your television set and announce it. That medium was lost a long time ago. And one of the things, it's not all gloom and doom. One of the interesting things, all of these people say, now this is not written in the Bible. Now they do talk about cities and roads paved in gold. That is in the Bible. That doesn't mean that much to me. But when I've got 50 of the 60 or so that I've looked at, and they all say something along the lines of, the flowers don't just look beautiful, they actually emanate beautiful song. They make sounds. They all say this. Now either they're all in on some useless hoax, or maybe that's God's way of putting something that authenticates them, that authenticates the message. Because how could they all have that little piece of information that is so far outside of our reality? Because I don't think anyone in here has ever seen a flower sing audible music or make beautiful sounds.
Little Shop of Horrors. Sorry, I can't help it.
All right. That did not occur to me, but I do. And another thing that came to me this week, because a lot of people ask, why do you dwell on the dark side so much? And when I say it came to me, I'm not even going to say it came to me, because I do believe everything that happens is influenced by the Holy Spirit and or Jesus and or God and or the heavenly powers in this world. So a lot of people ask me, why do you dwell on the dark side? You know, and I have an answer finally, because I've been wondering that myself. Heaven, when you find someone that is broken on earth, you talk to them about heaven, because they have a hope, because that's what, by and large, they need. But when you come across someone that does not know they're broken on earth, and we're all broken, let's understand that. When you come across someone that is not broken on earth, this thing that I feel is that they need to understand the realities of hell, because that is the message that will get to them. Because they don't realize they're already feeling good about themselves. They might be wealthy, or they may have a good place in this world, or they may have some authority, you know, whatever the things of this world. That message will get to that type of person much more so than, oh, heaven's real, you need to love God. Because a guy that's already having a wonderful life here does not realize why he needs God, because he feels he is ascended to the pinnacle of society, not realizing, you know, what awaits when we die our first death, because we're all going somewhere. Our essence, our soul has no mass. That implies it is eternal. We are all going to one of two places. And I believe what the Bible has to say about that. We're either going to heaven or we're going to hell. And most people don't go to heaven. It's the smaller percentage. So the majority is meaningless to me. And when you've got people from all different age ranges, different educational backgrounds, different social circles, socioeconomic upbringings, different languages, different countries, different epochs even, and they all describe little facets of, say, hell, and this is where, you know, uncovering the dark side is just what I feel my personal calling is. Catherine she is the best one-to-one sniper evangelizer I've ever seen. I'm going to tell you our little basketball story in a minute. But for me, when this little, and it's not just one kid doing paintings, this is manifesting itself in a lot of ways, through art often. And it's interesting that the conclusion of whether art and life, which one imitates which, the most famous position is that life imitates art. What is our art showing us? It is showing that this planet is going to be invaded by quote-unquote extra biological entities. It is showing that we are in the last days. The artists, the people that sing about this, that draw paintings of it, that make plays based around it, they have the same way there are little details of heaven that could not be known by all these people. They will give little details of hell. Gruesome, don't get me wrong. Utterly scary, frightening. And for me personally, when I need to get closer to God, I watch a few of those because I realize what it is Jesus Christ came to save us from. But they talk about there are, for instance, there are cells all over hell. And then they go into description. Different areas have different types of cells. Some have glass windows, some have bars. And depending on what your ultimate guilty verdict was, that determines where in hell you end up, if I'm aggregating all of these prophets. And I'll never be done reading the Bible, so I'm sure there's a lot more passages about a hell in there than I'll ever really be able to research and understand. But we're talking about a place that is going to end up swallowing up the vast majority of all humanity that has ever lived. As of right now, there are more people alive today on this earth than have ever lived throughout all of history. Let's say since the flood. And this is when I think why we're seeing all of these things converging on one point. Economic collapse, climate meltdown, race rioting, wars. There are rumors of wars. Everything that was predicted, it's all coming together right now. I personally don't see how there's 40 years to go. And what's a little chilling is the incredible number of people that, and I'm not saying this because I mentioned this on a prior show. I will bring you the people and you can hear it from them directly. But there is a preponderance of feeling that we're going to be lucky if we have an election that does not get called off this year. That's how soon I think it is. Not trying to scare you guys, but if anyone's on the fence, now is the time to get off of it, because this is spiritual. It's all based on how you believe and think about the world we live in. And if you're God's, you need to say it now. You need to verbalize it. And if you're not, understand, you do have a chance to be His, but understand He's not punishing you. You are choosing to walk away from Him, and that leaves you only one place to go. And I can pull up evidence that proves this place. It's written in here, so I believe it's real. But aside from this, there's a lot of evidence in this world that proves this place is real. And if I were, well, that sounds stupid saying that. It wouldn't surprise me if God is throwing out, He's getting everyone that can possibly be a messenger for Him to say something, because we're out of time. I mean, we're just out of time. So, yeah, what was the topic going to be today, Howard?
The Founding Fathers.
Yeah, the Founding Fathers.
Yeah, let's get into that now.
So, I know I'm like speaking all, this is what I'm, something hit me. Just something hit me. And I don't know how else to say it, but that was my piece. And no, I'm not picking on you or anyone. And I love counter opinions, don't get me wrong. But I do believe God does have modern day people that are out talking. And I think at least some of the people that claim to have these visions that they claim, this is beyond a dream. These are like out-of-body experiences. I just don't think they're all made up. I think some of them are genuine.
I totally believe what you're saying. I just disagree with what you're categorizing them as. But I believe it.
But we can put a
You know what
different
I mean?
label on them.
But-
Call them, whatever. Spiritually endowed folks.
Yeah, don't they say that the devil's in the details?
Right on.
Without a doubt. And that's actually how you can find them, is in the details. That is so true. Who coined that, by the way?
I did.
It was me.
I got to add that to the quotes book. The devil is in the details. So, don't worry, we can edit all this up. So what were we going to talk today?
Okay,
about
we
today,
got
Howard?
5 minutes to talk about the topic that we're supposed to.
How about, can I ask Kevin a few questions?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Not at all.
Why am I?
Exactly.
Why did I even come
He wasn't
today?
given that voice to sit and listen.
That's right.
You've got
We-
5 minutes till break.
We talked a little bit off air. Tell me a little bit about your belief system. You obviously had 9/11 spoke to you. You did some work for Loose Change, one of the movies that our buddies Dylan Avery, Corey Rowe, and there were a few other guys.
Jason Burmis.
Thank you. That's the other guy. Tell us a little bit about your background, where you are now. What, does this sound crazy to you? Because I didn't ask you about, where you are spiritually, if this is new territory, if this is old stuff for you. But I'm just going to give you the microphone and tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got here.
I'm on board Christian-wise. I mean, I don't prophesy, or not prophesize, but I don't evangelize like Catherine, but I mean, I'm on board. I'm a Christian as far as, I believe Jesus Christ is my Savior. But I believed everything. I was never a conspiracy guy until probably 2000. It was after 9/11, had nothing to do with 9/11, and somebody turned me on to the moon landing. That was a hoax. And that was right about the time the internet kind of took off, and there wasn't a lot. You had to go through BBSs and different places to find stuff.
That was hard. Back then. It was not easy.
Not at all. Not at all.
I mean, that in a way, it took us 50, 60 years to figure out JFK, but now, because of the internet, we can know what Sandy Hook really is in a matter of
seconds.
Yeah, even as it's happening.
So that kind of put me in to distrust my government, in the sense of conspiracies. And then was kind of on that. I have a friend, a former business partner, that lives on the East Coast that was a very good writer that wrote for a couple of that had things posted in a couple of white nationalist websites back in the early 2000s. VNN, Vanguard News Network, if you're familiar with that, and Alex Linder's stuff, and he was involved in National Alliance in the Chester Doles. If you know about the Chester Doles thing with the National Alliance, it was a guy that was part of the National Alliance, and they took his guns away, kind of a seizure.
What's the National Alliance?
National Alliance was a white socialist group. It was not the Klan, but it was a white,
like a skinhead thing.
On the extreme side, yeah, but just folks that were racially aware is what the folks that the intellectuals would like to say about that. I mean,
they're Nazis.
Yeah, I was going to say, so it sounds Aryan.
Yeah, it is. It's
half and half.
It's absolutely in line with that.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. But not everybody that was, not everybody that reads that stuff or that writes or that gets posted on websites are affiliated with those websites. So, anyways, my former business partner wrote a lot about things in the country that he didn't agree with in around 2001 to 2004, and got real involved in. This country isn't what it was when I grew up.
That's pre-Google, isn't it?
Yeah.
What, 97?
Yeah, 2000 to
2000, but it was after 9/11, but it was before.
I mean, I don't even know how you would have found
truth
anything
took off.
back then.
On websites that were on.
Yeah, right. One website links to another.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I can't think of the one crazy BBS that was out there that was the conspiracy one. Godlike Productions, that was one of them. There was a few out there where there was conspiracy stuff out there. And then we stumbled upon Loose Change in about 2006. In early 2006, my partner found that online, watched it.
Great movie.
Excellent movie. Contacted those guys. It was before it really exploded. They were working to do they were raising money to do 3.0. We contacted them and said, hey, do you need some help getting the word out there? My buddy had some money and to be able to spend time to push it. And I went and met with them in New York and said, we'll do a little PR for you. And we did about 4 months with them and stepped away from the project after about 4 months. But we got them in Vanity Fair, which made it a lot of people get.
Well, I read an article that the Loose Change family of movies, because they do have a few versions.
There's 3 of them, 1, 2, and 3.
That had been viewed by over 1 billion people. That's 1 in every 7 people on the planet.
Now that's prophetic.
Yeah.
now, exactly.
That's a lot.
Pretty crazy stuff when you think, even back then when it was millions.
So you're saying Dylan Avery is a prophet?
Yeah. If he was talking about Jesus, saying something Jesus told him to say, yes.
In a weird way, if you've spent time with them kids, it's amazing that they were able to pull that off and make it explode like that. I mean, the kid is almost prophetic. And I went and met with him in Oneonta, where he's from, at their house, where these kids lived in like a college. They're all college kids back then. They were all, I mean, he did Loose Change, 1.0 when he was 19 or something like that in his kitchen.
Wow. No, and the courage it took, because they were back in the days where you were getting spit on for even talking about this.
Big time.
And you'll never convince me that God, maybe Corey and Dylan, aren't aware of it themselves, but God absolutely had a hand in what they did. Because do you know how many people have woken up to the reality of God and the spirit world through 9/11?
Absolutely.
I mean, it's the number one event in our, in this generation's time. And it was, like Howard said, it was the first major event to be recorded everywhere.
Everywhere.
And every little angle of it. So if the devil is in the details, you can find him, and you can find him. Just on 9/11. I mean, that's how I got on my way here. But
it's an amazing story. I mean, the whole thing. Yeah. And like I said, those kids, it's pretty amazing that they did that, the way they did that. And I tell you, this is what happened. We did it for about 4 months. We were shipping them out of my little cottage in Princeton, New Jersey. We were shipping the movies out and handling their phone calls and all kinds of stuff. We screened it at Princeton. And we had an angel investor and his partner came to us because they were looking to raise money to make this movie, And at the time, Charlie Sheen had jumped on board with Alex Jones, and so they were all squawking. They were getting a lot of PR's, any PR is good PR. So it was getting out there in the mass media,
Was this the one with Sunjata?
Sunjata that ended up doing 3.0.
Okay, that was the one he did.
And to make a long story short, this angel investor took me and my partner after the screening, and the kids were at the screening, and then about a week later, the angel investor had us out to his giant horse ranch in East Amwell, New Jersey, and offered basically as much money as they needed. This guy was Australian, and I can't remember the guy's name. This is all like a blur to me. But the guy was basically saying, we'll give you the money to produce 3.0. We've got the resources. I know people in government. We'll get it done. Move here to this. We'll give you set up shop on this horse ranch. You're safe. And so we met with those kids, and they decided they didn't want to do that. They got a weird vibe about it, and they stepped away from that and decided to do it on their own. So, and that was when we walked away from it too. I mean, still followed it, but as far as working with them on the project and it exploded after that. I mean, they were after that they had gotten in bed for time with Alex Jones, and that helped them get Sunjata to get the voiceover and all that stuff.
That's some pretty incredible stuff.
It's pretty crazy stuff. And the guy that was writing, my partner, my former business partner, when he was writing all that stuff, and back before we woke up to 9/11, he during that time he was writing under his own name. His name's Mark Moran. You can Google him, and his stuff is still out there, and it's not all bad. Actually, really, none of it's bad, as far as Nazism or any of that. But
he's just a little bit not. No, I'm just kidding.
He just believed that his country has changed. He grew up in a town where he didn't have to lock his doors, and now he's 45 years old, and he's got to lock his doors. And,
the police used to be Mayberry, used to be Andy Griffith, and now there's SWAT teams that just bust your doors down and kill you.
Exactly. So, long story longer, he was writing. He was real active in his small little borough called Hopewell, New Jersey. Where his family was, your wife, a son, a baby on the way, and the community of Hopewell, because he was active in his community, said, we'd like you to fill a spot on the city council. It's vacated. This is in August. We'll put you on the spot, and then you can run as an incumbent if you'd like to. But what you do for the community, your family have found the town. It's the town where John Hart's from, signed the Declaration of Independence. He's like buried 100 yards from my buddy's front door, or my former friend. And he said, yeah, I'll do that. They swore him in on a Monday. It was on the Trenton Times, him and his wife and his kids standing there. Local boy does good on city council. And a guy from Trenton Times Googled his name. And on Tuesday, it was in the Trenton Times. And by Thursday, it was in the New York Times. And by Friday, he turned the thing over. They were getting death threats. It's satellite trucks parked on the corner of his street.
Wow.
Crazy stuff. And his wife was taking phone calls at the house, and she was pregnant. And she basically told him, you got to stop. We got to come back and protect the fort and the family before.
Yeah, lower profile.
But when you make the ADL mad and those folks mad, when you touch that.
What's ADL?
Anti-Defamation
okay,
League.
Thank you.
Those folks, they don't like it, when you state facts that.
Well, that happens.
Scary stuff.
That's happening a lot nowadays. People
and
get pissed off
then.
when state facts. But I got a fact to state.
Break time.
We're going to need to take a quick break. So we'll be back with Kevin.
I'm going to have some
5.
interesting questions for him when we get back.
Hi, welcome back to Down the Rabbit Hole. We are joined by our special guest, Kevin, today, who has some experience, and he's not from our circle. He's not from our 9/11 circle, so it makes it kind of interesting for us. So we were just doing a little Q&A with our pal Kevin, so we can go right back to that because I know Dave was not finished. So
I had some questions for you. So you got hip to something being off when you started looking into the moon landings. Were they faked?
I'm not sure. I tend to believe yes. I believe that it probably didn't happen.
Why would they have been faked?
To show dominance as a country for the military-industrial complex? To beat Russia, when we went to the moon. You didn't. We got 2 cars up there. We played golf. Some flags up there. I mean, come on. We're Americans. That's what we do. I mean, with the computing power of my watch that we went.
Yeah, supposedly.
Yeah, I got an egg timer that has more computing power than the...
Exactly.
Anyone else have a theory on why the moon landings were allegedly?
Well, I mean, I don't know specifically because I don't look into that too much, but anything that's faked is, I think, for some sort of distraction. It's to distract from something else that's going on. I don't know what.
Well,
I don't know if they were faked, and I don't really care, but Howard, I know, has kind of a interesting take on it.
Funny you should ask, Dave.
I'm asking.
Well, I think that if they were faked, it's still not 100% one way or the other. It falls in, I'm with DiBiase, it falls into the what does it really matter category. But if they were faked, I mean, what did we accomplish with the moon landing? It wasn't just going to the moon. It was proving that there was space, and it was getting a view of the Earth from above. And lo and behold, the Earth is round, right?
That's what they tell us.
And if the Earth is round, well, then that means the flat Earth from the Bible must be incorrect. So therefore, if you can poke a hole in one of the many prophecies of the Bible, then that must mean it must all be crap, right?
Yeah, for me, that is, I personally believe that the moon landings were faked. There's so much confusion in that arena. I don't want to try and...
Oh, there's just so much stuff out there that shows it. I mean, like I said, I'm not 100% one way or the other, but I can no more tell you that it absolutely happened.
There was a quote, and this was 1948. It's been on this show before. Famous astronomer Fred Hoyle, Sir Fred Hoyle, probably the most important astronomer of the century outside of Albert Einstein. 1948. So understand, in 1948, there were questions about what is really out there, what is really... And his quote was this: "Once a photograph of the Earth taken from outside is available, a new idea as powerful as any in history will be let loose." And I think you're on the right track, because if you tie this into, is there something in our skies? And if there are just too many credible military generals, pilots, air traffic controllers that absolutely will say privately or in their private internet testimonies or through the disclosure project of Stephen Greer will say there is absolutely contact. Now, they believe in many cases, not all, that it is aliens from some other galaxy. But even now, Stephen Greer, and of course Bill Cooper was famous because when he first started, he believed that these were entities from another solar system. And by the end of his career, he said, no, these are the demons from the Bible. So you've got to get over a couple hurdles. One is you've got to believe there's something out there. Half of the population doesn't believe it, but half does. So for the half that does believe that there really is something up there, you got a real big question to ask yourself. Are these little gray men, are they really from Zeta Reticuli, or are these the demons from the Bible posing? And you cannot... God is very clear. There is something that is going to happen in this world, a deception so large that it will get just about everyone in the world outside of hardcore Christians to believe whatever this thing is. And if you believe in predictive programming or soft disclosure, enough world leaders, i.e. Illuminati leaders, whether it's Reagan or whether it's Kissinger or whether it's Rockefeller himself, I'll talk about, if we were ever invaded from another planet, that is what would that would unite us all. And you can't have an invasion from another world, coming from other planets if we're not on a planet ourselves. And there's an incredible amount of, I think that's something we're not going to know until, we die with certainty. But I think that, for us, that seems like a lifetime ago, but in the time scale of a spiritual war that's been going on since Satan and his demons were cast out of heaven, it's nothing. It's 60 years ago. It's nothing. All of this is converging, and all of a sudden it's only been in the last 100 years. And the Bible even said we think we're going to be getting smarter, but we're actually going to become more foolish than ever. And when you actually start to research things like creation versus evolution and what the existence of DNA means, and the Bible by chapter 6 is talking about there were giants on the earth, and then you see the systematic way in which archaeological digs of giants are covered up. The photographs are there, the stories of the archaeologists are there. We are getting primed for the biggest trick in humanity, and I think a lot of its origins began with our space program, also all named after the same demonic gods that have been around forever: Gemini, Apollo, Mercury. And they are going to end up, we're going to feel like the story is going to be we're being visited by somebody. And talk about, now that's something that would scare people to make their hearts fail. Another prediction. And the sightings of these things, and I don't think it's just demonic, spiritual. There's also nuts and bolts, metallic, advanced technology, craft that we have access to. Enough people have come out talking about this too. And they're going to be used in unison, and we're going to get a whole good cop, bad cop played against us. And they're all bad cops, just so you know, in my opinion. And I think we're going to see it in our lifetime. That's my personal feeling. I'm no prophet. Right,
You
Kat?
got to be careful with time predictions.
He just said in his lifetime. He didn't say how long he's going to live.
Yeah, I could die tomorrow, or I could live to be about
50 years from now,
100.
maybe. Yeah, sure.
I don't know. I just feel that way.
Huh?
That's my theory of why they would have faked the moon landings. And if it was an American-only thing, I'm for a long time I thought the buck stopped with, we're going to show our American power. But the thing is if you look at what the ISS is, and that's nothing more than a movie stage, and a bad one, actually. If you see the ISS people, even their sets are a joke, because something will jolt all three of them, but the green screen in the background that has the cord floating, the cord isn't jolted, just the people. So it's obvious that there is video manipulation going on, and they make a lot of mistakes. You can see air bubbles coming from the pool they film their spacewalks in, things that could not truly exist in the vacuum of space. And what is the ISS? I mean, it is international. We've got multiple nations, and it's the very same nations that have formed a treaty to protect the borders of Antarctica. Why would we form a treaty to guard the borders of Antarctica? Think about that. And these are the same countries that all claim, oh no, we've sent a craft to Venus. The Russians apparently did. Supposedly now we're walking on Mars. Not humans, but our man-made machinery. Then you juxtapose that to a guy like Matt Boylan, who was a graphic artist inside of NASA, who said, we need you to paint this stuff so that people believe the Earth is round, and that the joke inside of NASA is it's flat. Unbelievable things to even consider, but I suspect that prepping us for this coming deception, you got to lay the groundwork for something like that a long time in advance. That's my personal feeling. Anyone else have any other thoughts on that one?
And just my point with that, bringing that up, that was just my awakening. Like, I'm not stuck in the whole moon landing. I'm not one of those folks. That was just one of the first things that, like finding out there's no Santa Claus. Like, what?
Right.
And then once you find something else out, I mean, this is what once you see that there's a deception like that by a government, then what's to say that it's all not fake? What's to say that everything's not a deception?
You look at everything differently.
You look at everything differently. So, I tend not to believe it. I tend to tell people I'm more of a political atheist, at least in this country, as far as things go. I don't believe it. I don't believe it any more than watching Full House, and that's a real thing. You know, I mean, it's all
Full House
make believes. Yeah, right, exactly. You know, I mean, it's make believe. It's all like you said. It's a distraction. It's,
well, you know,
everything
if it
is a
came
distraction.
out where I'm at with it, if it came out tomorrow and they said, "Look, here's proof," it was totally fake, and had people admit it, whatever, I would absolutely be like, yeah, of course it was fake. I mean, you know, that sounds cynical, but it's not. It's actually probably more realistic.
Yeah.
Of course, because, I mean, I have my own opinions on the space program. I believe the whole thing's pagan in nature, because it is. But, so nothing really good is going to come out of that. And the whole idea of, you know, exhibiting the American power by sending some piece of metal to a rock out there, that's really not power. It doesn't exhibit anything. How about maybe give somebody a sandwich? That might be kind of cool.
There was a quote I came across this week from a guy that plays a role in our show, Adam Weishaupt, who's credited with the founding of the Illuminati. Now, perhaps he was instrumental in the coining of that term, which exists to modern day, but he didn't invent the ideals of this group. They go back to Babylon, which you know, Dave. But his quote was this, and this would have been about 1780, give or take. And this could lead into what was behind the founding of our country. But his quote's this, and you can totally see it with what we've talked about. He says this: "The great strength of our order lies in its concealment. Let it never appear in its own name, but always covered by another name, another occupation." And, you know, his links to the Illuminati are without question, and the Illuminati's links to Luciferianism are without question. These guys deceive by nature, and it wouldn't be a big stretch to, if the Illuminati was founded with those ideals, yes, you do tell the public this is a show of American strength, but there's, what is the esoteric agenda? What is the hidden agenda that is behind it? Because it's not logical that politicians would sacrifice their potential careers on something that will not manifest until they're long out of office. What is the driving force behind that? What is compelling? What gets all those people to go to Bohemian Grove? And who sends out the invites for that? I'd like to know that one.
You didn't get your invite?
Jimmy Buffett goes.
Of course he does.
You know?
Does
Come
he?
on.
Anyone,
Yeah.
I would stand to argue that anyone whose name we're aware of that's mainstream probably has some connection to that place. Because I don't think you get to a certain point without having it.
Oh, for sure.
So,
But once you're in, most of the people have been compromised anyway, so that's why it's a secret.
Well, being there
You
means
know.
you're compromised.
Exactly.
So, yeah, that's for sure. I think they're all connected to that somehow.
I agree. All right, so moon landings. Do we want to talk about the founding of our country?
Oh, you can keep going, Kevin.
9/11 question. You believe that it was what was presented to us is not what really happened.
Correct.
So what did really happen, and who did it, and why? What are your thoughts about that?
After all this time and being involved in it, I don't know what happened. I just know what was been presented isn't true, and I think the burden of proof is on them. I really don't know. I just know that, you know, but everything stood down, 4 planes, 2 that you can't find. There's no wreckage of them anywhere.
2 that are still in circulation.
Yeah, right. 2 that are circulation. 19 hijackers from Saudi Arabia, but we wouldn't bomb somewhere else. I mean, the whole story just makes no sense. I mean, on paper, if it was a football game and we sat here and wrote it all out, every coach in America would go, "You're going to lose that game. That's a lie. That's not right." But yet, the Americans just, you know, or the general populace, pretty much just lemmings in line. Just.
Do you think it was taken down? Do you think they took it down deliberately? It was charges, or do you think
Absolutely. Yeah. I believe that there was thermite, and I saw Dr. Steve Jones speak and read that stuff, and I know about gauge, and I definitely had nothing to do with airplanes and jet fuel that melted these buildings, but we've all had that argument, and back when I was trying to sell Catherine on it, one of my most intelligent friends that I have, I think if I can sell this person, because when you find out this stuff, and we talked about this last night, I think when you have your awakening, you want to tell everybody.
Oh, yeah.
You want to, it doesn't matter. You're Chicken Little. You want to just tell your grandma and your mom and everybody, and if you don't know how to do that, and obviously, I was just excited.
You sound crazy.
You sound crazy. You got a tinfoil hat, If it's, that box is true on the wall. That box in everybody's house tells the truth, right? So everything that we're all coming to tell you is got to be hogwash, So I just think the burden of proof's on them. I don't know what. I just know that there's no way that could happen. There's no way that could happen like any of these other crazy false flags that have happened in the last 3 or 4 months in this country that people just jump on board with. That a guy ran into a nightclub in Miami and whacked out 50 people out of 200, and in a room full of men. I don't care what your sexual preference is, but in a room full of men, the guy came in with a weapon that's not semi-automatic.
What kills me about that particular story is that they attribute it to ISIS.
Right, yeah.
This is
everything.
This is their latest ISIS attack. It's like, no, the dude frequented there. He was a repressed homosexual. Nobody there would date him. The ISIS thing, it was a front to make his father proud of his death.
Right.
Come on.
Show me the bodies. There's not 50 bodies.
I would only make a connection with that simply because we're talking about evil.
Right.
So it's directly connected to the same things ISIS is connected to, and Al-Qaeda and all these other groups that are counterfeits, etc. They're all connected.
Right.
There's no lone wolf attack. This is a moniker created to distract people. They're
all false flags.
There's no self-radicalization. None of this is real. These people are, even if they don't talk to each other, they're all connected. Absolutely. No question about this.
Actually, you can find and I can't speak to the recent one we just brought up in Florida, but whether we're talking about Jared or the VTech shooter, the Denver shooting, all of these guys have connections to people that would have been very, very close to the MKUltra and Monarch programs, where, we have weaponized the splitting of personalities, and I think that's what modern day demonization looks like.
That's why I say they're all. That's what I base the argument on, is that it's all connected. Like the 17-year-old that slit the priest's throat in France, and all these things that go on. They say, oh, well, there's no connection to terrorism directly. He didn't take orders directly from some leader wherever, but
because
argue,
that makes what he did better, right?
Well, it's more of a distraction, so that it's not, it's some other problem, So to argue, I think that the government hasn't gone far enough with their policies. It can't just simply be that some people are acting like animals, So without recognizing the direct connection between all of these things are connected. These guys don't know each other. Right? They don't even speak the same language. But there's an absolute direct connection to each other. Absolutely. They're taking orders from the same place. So when they say lone wolf, they say self-radicalized on the internet. So there's no tie to ISIS directly. I argue that is false, that there's absolute direct tie, because this is all satanic in nature.
Top of the food chain.
It's all satanic in nature.
Yeah, well, all our famous murders had CIA handlers. From James Earl Ray to Lee Harvey Oswald to Sirhan. Do your research.
Yeah, it's the same team.
And where did the
different
CIA
jerseys,
come from? It came right out of Nazi Germany's intelligence apparatus. And what were they known for? Occultism. They really believed they were interfacing with spirits.
So they were.
Hitler writes about it. He's like, I feel like I've been anointed by God, and that's why. And the people felt it too, and that's why he was erroneously so sure about his military decisions, because something, I believe, was materializing to Hitler, where he had Hitler convinced, you're you are going to be a special person of God.
You know what's interesting about that is when I did the Bible study on the book of Revelation, one of the things that we studied and talked about is, like we were talking about earlier, it says in the Bible, Jesus said, no one knows the time except for the Father. That means Jesus doesn't even know the time. That means Satan doesn't know the time.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at every generation, there is a figure in history that Satan puts there that is readily available to take on the spirit of the Antichrist if God moves to send his son.
I think that's an awesome point,
That's
and
a
I
great point.
totally agree with you, is that he's
Do we
had...
have any doubt who that person is right now?
I don't,
Yeah,
mean,
I do.
I can't answer
I
that.
do believe what Catherine just said. In fact, it's even written in some of the New Testament books that the spirit of Antichrist is already at work. But I do believe that Satan's had to have this guy on standby because the date of when this was going to happen was not told to us, so that it would not be known by him specifically, so he would not be able to counterfeit it or, beat it by a day or whatever,
Right.
all the tricks he uses to fool people.
Yeah, because he's never had an original idea in his life. He's the great imitator, the author of confusion, and the father of all lies.
But
So-
it's only been, the description of what society would be like when that day came. There were 8 descriptors about our morality, about people growing cold inside, about people falling away, about technology increasing. All these things have happened. In the last one, because this is what was in the days of Noah, was the genetic manipulation of man. And that, if you find out what all of these alien sightings and UFO abductions, whatever you want to call them, one of the common denominators is there are humans being impregnated by these things. And someone had aggregated, because when someone has a run-in with an alien, they either call no one, but if they're going to call someone, they probably call their local police department. Some MUFON researcher went around and determined that we're looking at roughly 8 to 9 million abduction reports since 1970-something, which is like 3% of our population. That's a big 9 million reports on paper made to precinct. This isn't some guy saying, there are 9 million reports. This guy aggregated the data from thousands of police precincts. And it was like, holy cow. Like, there's a race of something that is being created. And I think we're going to meet them all pretty soon. How's that?
You got
That
that.
was
and
awesome.
You got that, and then you have 600,000 children missing every year
Yep.
Yeah, that's just here.
in the United States.
Yeah,
just
that's just here. So,
So, could that factor into it? Some of these kids disappear and they're never heard from
Oh,
again.
yeah.
Not all of them become prostitutes for George Bush Sr.
Look, we're...
right. That's right.
Our enemy is someone that hates humans so bad. Like, he gets enjoyment out of
Well, it's
seeing
jealousy.
a human
It's the
hanging
worst.
on a meat hook.
Sure.
There's nothing he won't do. Nothing. There's nothing as sacred
Because it's
to
the
this
worst
Yeah,
kind
apparently.
of hate. Who do you hate the most? Someone you're jealous of. You hate their guts for one reason or another. And
That's why
what it
women
is.
have gotten a historical bad rap since the dawn of time. Some people say, oh, yeah, Satan went after Eve in the garden because she was a woman. But not, I agree, but not for the reasons most people think. They say because, she was the weaker of the two. Satan was the most beautiful thing in God's heavenly realm. And until Eve came along, she was the crown jewel. She was the grand finale of the garden. And so, of course, he went after her. He was jealous. He was, right?
Mhm.
So,
Good point.
Plus, Adam and Eve were sitting essentially in the very garden that it seems, and there's a passage out of Isaiah where they're talking about Satan in his former glory was in the Garden of Eden. He was clothed in jewels, and he was the number 2 guy in the whole cosmic apparatus. And talk about counterfeiting. What's he done with the Jews and the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, I mean, the reason there's so much outrage from Islam towards the nation of Israel is the very houses that they built, they were kicked out of at gunpoint so that Jewish families could just move in and start living. I'm human. I would hate, if my dad suddenly started being, took favor of someone that's not even his blood, I'd want to kill that kid. I could understand that. And that's probably what, because I've often wondered, what is Satan's motivation at this point?
Oh, to tear as many people away from Jesus Christ as he can. To keep as many people from turning.
His motivating factor, what started everything, is that he's jealous.
If he's
jealous because humans were given free will.
He's obviously intelligent. Now, if you're intelligent and you know you're up against the Creator that is not bound by time, whereas Satan, I do think, is now on our timeline. I don't know if he ever was able to. Wouldn't you get smart and just go, the only chance I have at any sort of an existence is to basically throw myself down on the mercy of the court? Well, I'm dead anyway.
It's a perfect example of how hubris takes hold. It's pride. It's just what it is.
Do you think
he thinks he still can win?
And he's building an army too. I'm sorry I interrupted you, but he's building his army because he also knows about the 1,000-year reign. He knows he's going to have an army, so he's putting his army together right now.
Yeah, for the purpose that he thinks he can still win.
Right.
I think they're together, and they are just foaming at the mouth at the gates, waiting to go. There's a lot of folks that talk about that. There's a lot of people in this world that are looking forward to this for very different reasons. Some in the dark side, some on the light side. But do you think he really believes he can win, or do you think he's just conveyed that to his followers?
I don't know.
He doesn't really believe it.
I think. Well, I mean, if he didn't really believe it, then what's the point?
Well, he must have believed it the first time, right?
I mean, I think that it's the perfect example of why pride is so dangerous. Because we already know he doesn't win. He probably has been told he doesn't win, right? I mean, so it's just denial. It's just pride. It is the same thing that caused him to fall in the first place.
It's the same thing that causes people not to see Jesus as the Son of God.
That's why pride is so warned against.
The same thing that
very dangerous.
Shrouded my eyes.
That's very dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, there was a time in my life where I thought I knew it all, and now I realize I was actually even. Because when you know a bunch of stuff that's wrong, you are even farther away from knowing the truth than if you're just a blank slate knowing nothing.
Yeah, I mean, pride is the eraser of faith.
Interesting.
You can't really have both.
That's that whole
it'll be a struggle.
Serving two masters thing.
It'll be a struggle.
I would not like to be a fly on the wall. I mean, I would, but I wouldn't, don't get confused here. God, I'm not asking to, be shown this. But it would be interesting to listen in on one of Satan's top-level chief of staff meetings. I'd like to know how those things operate. I
don't know. We just had one, didn't we? The DNC convention?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we just had that. I think that's what it's like.
Look, the highest-ranking
just nonsense.
Human on the planet, and this, I think, goes above the Rothschilds. And Dave, I think you're much closer to the mark when we're talking about the Black Pope, the leader of the Jesuit, the bubble inside of who many people have said this is the man that truly runs the world, and the Rothschilds report to him, and blah, blah, blah. So even the highest-ranking human in the hierarchy of this spiritual war is still many levels below the other participants in this, because you've got the archons, the principalities, the powers, the authority, the different levels of angels that are all, I believe, operative. You've also got the displaced souls of the Nephilim, which I do believe that is when we see a demon inhabit a human. That's what I think we're looking at. Oh, and I saw, man, it's upsetting. But I saw someone out there had put together a collage of all of these. I'll basically say, I mean, to me, it's obvious now. This is people being possessed or demonized. I guess that's the proper term, is demonized.
Demonized, yeah.
Possession implies, we all have a picture of the exorcist. That's not at all what is really going on. Not to say that that type of thing does not happen, but it's this, just a collage of these people in public places suddenly having, this is not a, this isn't, what is it when you have that tick disease and you have a
Tourette's.
Yeah, but what is it when you have an episode?
Seizure.
Yeah. These aren't people having seizures. And there's something going on with bath salts and this flakka drug. Do you guys know anything about this?
Yeah, and all the synthetic drugs that have this similar effect.
Oh my God, all these guys are naked. There's hundreds, if not thousands of them. They've all got superhuman strength. They're raging.
Yeah, they actually exhibit cannibalistic behavior.
You guys wonder why the cops are paranoid?
Well, there's other reasons why they're paranoid, not just that. But yeah, that is an interesting thing because they've taken drugs that are illegal, and so you could argue that the reason why we have this is because of the quote-unquote war on drugs. But that's a whole other discussion. And they just modify the molecule by one little branch, and they skirt the law. And the further they go with it, the more dangerous this stuff gets.
Yeah, and if you understand DMT, you do know that ingesting certain chemicals can open up your spiritual eye.
Well, the occult has known about this for
but look, that's why there's fluoride in our water.
That's what they use drugs for.
It creates an enamel on our pineal gland, which is what Eastern culture calls the third eye, the spiritual eye. Why is there a push to put the same poison that were given to the Jews in the death camps during World War II? Why does this need to be in everyone's water supply?
It's good for your teeth, Dave.
Yeah, topically.
It's good for your teeth.
But to ingest it?
Don't argue with that. It's good for your teeth. We know this.
What are you saying about basketball?
So I was impressed with, I was saying she's awesome when it comes to...
playing basketball?
I don't know about that. But you were bragging to those kids. So we're in downtown Detroit. We just done some stuff down there, and there's some kids playing basketball, and they had told us they were really thirsty. So we ran to the store, bought them a bunch of waters, came back, and we're just hanging out on the court with them. And within 3 seconds, Catherine's like, does anyone need a prayer said for them? And in my old world self, I'm embarrassed to say this, but I can't hide it from God. I'm just like, oh, okay, don't throw Jesus out, please. And
we were in Cass Corridor. We were in the hood.
Oh yeah, we had no business.
Did
There's
she
good
even
people down
wait
there.
45 seconds?
No, not even close.
That's
I'm
probably that's where
I'm
you
still
should
making
be,
jokes to these guys. I'm like, see, not all white people are bad. 'Cause,
Yeah.
there was all black kids from 10 years old to 20. And so we roll out there with all these waters, and Catherine's like, does anyone here believe in Jesus? And then a few people are like, yeah, and a few guys are looking around. And, does anyone need a prayer said for him? And one kid piped up, I want you to pray for my dad. And then Catherine says, you know what, tell you what, come here, guys, everyone come out here. He goes, let's do a prayer circle. And in the middle, they stop their basketball game, and next thing you know, I'm holding hands, and I've got my 5-year-old with me too. And we're all holding hands with all these young black kids that we would never have known under. And she does the best prayer that it was poetry coming out of her mouth.
You guys, but that was God inspired. That's what I mean. God put that on my heart. Do you think for 1 second I would have asked 20 black guys to get in a circle with me? I mean, little white girl from the suburbs. We're in Cass Corridor in the middle of one of the most dangerous neighborhoods. But I knew that God was putting it on my heart to do that. I knew that those kids needed prayer, and I knew that he wasn't going to let me fail in that situation. And that's why that happened. And he gave me the words to speak over that park and over that neighborhood,
You know what's interesting is, I think if if you would have done that in a white suburban neighborhood, I don't think it would have flown. Like, they were so much more receptive. I don't know.
I don't know. I think for me, in my mind, what comes to me immediately is that proves my point that I always make, is that racism is fake.
Yeah, absolutely.
Totally fake.
Absolutely.
It's
It
created,
is.
It's fake.
We
It's
were
not real.
talking
Totally.
about that at your office, Howard.
Yeah.
You've got a
Yeah.
few black guys that work for you, and they're like, every white person I've ever known, they're not racist, and the black people I know, they're not racist. I mean, the
No.
only place we hear about it is
Pretty much everyone's cool. So
On the news.
on TV, they pump it, but this is proof. Because really, if you have a theory about something, it's a theory, right? If anything is presented that disproves it, then it's not law, right?
true.
That's how this
I mean,
works.
you dump the theory and
So
you start over.
These things in everyday life and what everyone experiences on a day-to-day level proves that whole idea is a fabricated deception that is used effectively, mind you, to completely trick people.
It had an effect on me because the first thing out of my mouth was, "We're
Well,
doing
you're like
this to let-"
worried.
Yeah, I'm like, I wasn't worried for whatever reason. Not like for safety or anything like that. My first words were, "Hey, we're doing this so that you guys don't think, all white people are jerks." And one of the kids piped up and said, "We don't think that."
Right, of course they
Yeah,
don't
Dave
think
shows
that.
up like a chief of a visiting Indian tribe. We come in peace.
Yeah, exactly.
That's funny.
But no, I love that because stories like that are ammunition for me because I make this argument all the time, and I get it from all sides that I'm nuts. But that one instance of something like this is enough to prove that theory is absolutely false.
And Dave, I love how God moved your heart to get the waters and all that for them. That was you.
That was awesome. Now
That was you.
these kids are going to be like, man, those people were cool, right? I mean, that had an effect.
Did you give them any business
For sure.
cards?
They invited us to their ball tournament they were having that
It's
night.
No,
awesome.
They,
I didn't
they
have
organized their own
I doubt-
intra-neighborhood
Yeah.
I
ball
doubt they
tournament.
They
have
needed more water.
computers and
Yeah.
internet.
They're bringing water. But and that's where we could do a whole show on what I think about the idea of racism.
It's
But-
learned.
Well, it's I don't even know that it's. I think it's just a trick. It's just a dirty,
divide.
rotten, it's just a dirty, rotten trick, and it works so well. That's why it's very cowardly, and it's in your face all the time, except for everyday life. Go to the store, go to the gas station, go to the bank, wherever. I mean, nobody cares, man. Nobody cares.
In fact, it's usually, I find, the opposite. Like when a black guy and a white guy kind of like realize, hey, you're cool, I'm cool. There's like an extra, like this racism thing is.
It's totally
you feel like
fake.
an extra bond, like we've risen above.
right.
But you've risen above something that doesn't even exist.
Exactly.
But that same social conditioning was at work on me because I walked in there already defensive, going, "Hey, just want you guys to know, not all white people are jerks."
Right, and that was probably a
Please
little
don't
bit
shoot.
comedy too. You're probably kind of kidding
we
a
were
little bit,
yeah,
but
for sure.
I know where you're coming from with that because you'd instantly be like, "Hey, just so you guys know," because you're kind of, but they may have had preconceived notions about you guys too, as you walked up, and then as you were there, like, "Oh, these guys are pretty cool," but that no one, it actually takes self deprogramming, if that's even a word, to stop yourself thinking this way. It's actually quite challenging.
Yeah, it's very challenging.
It actually is, and not saying that I'm like a hateful person. I reject it outright on all sides of the fence. Anything that has to do with identifying people by race, I outwardly reject because that's cowardly and it's not really accurate. It's not
Well,
even
look, if
true.
you're black, you're black. Now, I do believe in stereotypes. All right, I might get in trouble for this, but I'm going to just say this. I think as a group, black people are not as good at drivers as the rest of the population. I'm just going to say, okay? There
But
are
that's-
some stereotypes out there, and
I
some
guess.
may be true, some may be not. But the ones that are based on hate, that and I'm Hispanic, by the way, so I feel like I have more liberty to make some of these
Yeah.
jokes.
Yeah, and I'm Sicilian, so I guess I'm kind of black. So.
Oh, you are a total loser. No, I'm just kidding. And I always go back to that Christopher Walken movie with whatever. So
True
all right, I was joking
it's a
about
true,
the bad
True Romance.
True
True
Romance.
Romance.
Thank you,
Yes.
Roger. Finally,
Yeah.
what do you think about all what we're talking about here, Roger?
Okay.
Be honest. Do you think
okay.
we're off our rocker?
No,
or
no,
are
no,
we
no,
like,
no.
do we have something here?
No,
And
here's my take on things. I've always had a feeling or instinct on things in my life. So there's certain things that happen to me I do not understand, or I use logic for everything I try to do. I try to be as Spock as possible with certain things, sometimes with emotion.
Minus the eyebrows.
Minus the eyebrows, of course. But when you guys are talking about the whole September 11th thing, the moon landing, there's a lot of things that don't make sense to me. There's a lot of things I don't understand. And do I try to seek the truth? If I had time, I work 2 jobs. I'm quite busy myself. But to be honest with you, there's some shit going on. Pardon my language. There's some crap going on. I don't know what it is. I know one thing is certain. The whole Robert F. Kennedy, John F. Kennedy, the assassinations, all that, something's going on.
Preach it, brother.
That's the whole, even with, my father is Cuban. So my father was a Cuban political prisoner, and they did not, if you weren't communist, they put you in prison. That's just the way it was until he was sponsored out of the country.
Holy cow. When was your dad in Cuba?
He was born there in 34. He left in 67 he left.
My dad, he was American. He lived in Cuba. In fact, he was one of the people as the Russians were coming in to set up their missiles in the late 50s, early 60s. They were being portrayed as the Russian circus was in town. And a bunch of people, including my dad, were in a group were like, no, these. And my dad was a World War II vet. And he's like, no, these guys are military. And he'd gone to the embassy to say, hey, there's something going on here. And, one thing
led to another, right? The whole invasion of Bay of Pigs, or the Dia de los Muertos, or not Dia de los, but the Dia de los Puercos. But, my dad's always been, my dad's done everything by the book. He's been a citizenship, but he's always, even him, something's amiss. And I don't have enough to evidence, and maybe I need to seek that out, but I used to be Catholic. I believe in something. I don't know what it is. I had 12 years of Catholic school rammed down my throat. So sorry,
that's
a
problem.
Yeah, and then we all spent 20 years saying, well, that's not right. And then by grace, I know this is our story, Catherine.
Yeah.
We're definitely Christian. My mom's ultra Catholic. It's Hispanic mothers. you understand.
Oh, my mother was a go to church every Sunday kind of woman. She was, until the day she passed away. It was the same thing. Just she made us go, and we went, and then I just was like, this is not right. I dealt with a lot of BS in Catholic school that I don't even want to get into, but I believe in it quite a bit. Sometimes I just keep my opinions to myself. I'm observant, but I know there's something amiss. I don't know what it is. But I don't believe. There's a Rage Against the Machine poster that has the phrase that I live my motto by: "Don't let them think you're free, because you're truly not free." And it's like the Statue of Liberty, and it's got this these drug or the drug paraphernalia on the top, and holding people down. I know what's going on. That's
actually not bad for a flaming leftist.
Well, no, They Rage knew the machine they were up. It's the same machine we talk about, and they were raging against it. They were cutting edge back then. My advice to you, and I'll let Catherine take this baton from me because she's much better at this. Because I know she's already drooling right now, going, "Oh, I'm gonna when do you get off?" My advice is, don't get caught up on these treadmills. I have jobs and bills to pay, dude. That is part of the design system we're in. So you don't take the time. What we're talking about here, this has eternal implications. I would, if I were you, make it the highest priority in your life to figure it out. Your heart will tell you what's true.
My fiance gets on me all the time because I don't relax enough, because I'm always and I know I'm part of the machine. Trust me, I know that I'm working and they're keeping me distracted because they just want me to be apathetic and not give a shit not care while they do things. I know that. I'm aware of it.
You're fine.
But I'm just trying my hardest to right now provide for my son and get him through. And when he gets through and he gets safely off to his passage, then I can go and sit there and go and do what I got to do.
Well, just make sure your son takes Jesus Christ with him.
My son's highly religious.
Yeah,
this is key.
I'd like to say 2 things, and then I'm going to turn it over to Kat, which will probably close the show. The reason that I came to Christ was because of my son. Because I'm responsible for him, and I want him to have the ability to look at everything to make his own decisions. But in the beginning, he needs to get his guidance from me. I'm the head of the household. And the other good news is you're young. All of us came much later. I mean, what are you, in your 20s?
I'm 34.
Oh, okay.
So he's an old guy.
Okay.
Yeah.
But he's still
Hispanics have
16
good
years
skin.
younger than me. So
He's got a minute.
He looks
Yeah.
Romulan, though. I did want to mention the Spock thing because I do want to get this into one of our shows. I know I brought it up, but I'm going to add visuals to this. He mentioned Spock, and then I want to give this over. Was there anything else you wanted to say about your son?
That was it.
So, Roger, you'd mentioned the biggest assassinations of our time. You mentioned JFK, MLK, and RFK. So JFK was 1963. MLK was, I believe, April 4th, 1968, and then RFK was in June of 1968. And if someone can verify that, I'd appreciate it. So some of our past shows have been on predictive programming, and there's a scene. It's an old Star Trek from the William Shatner Spock version, and this aired on March 29th of 1968. And in this episode, the Enterprise crew had gone back in time to Earth, 1968. Now, we know the show was set in the future. And in there, Spock says there's going to be a famous assassination today. And my conspiracy mind, I start looking it up, and I'm like, when did this thing air? And this particular episode aired on March 29th. And it was 4 days later that Martin Luther King was killed, which for me is one of the top 3 most famous assassinations in U.S. history.
Wow. I thought that episode aired in 69. I did not correlate the two together because that's one of my favorite episodes. Is that,
so you know the one I'm talking about?
Yeah, it's the one where they have that they
it's
try
like called alternate ending or something.
They try to create a spin-off series with Terry. It was one of the first appearances that Terry Garr ever made on TV.
I know there's a couple where they go back to 1968. It was the last. Just look for the Star Trek that would have aired March 29th, 1968. This was 5 days before MLK was assassinated, and this, when you look at the symbology in Star Trek, and I'm going to use this segment to show that to the YouTube crowd, absolutely left-hand path. All of the symbols are there. And here they are, the same way 9/11 was predicted all throughout our media. They predicted what would be the most famous assassinations of our century. 4 days before they happened. Maybe it's a coincidence. So MLK happens, and then a few weeks later, Robert F. Kennedy buys it after that.
Okay, you got about a minute and a half, Kat. Let's see how good you are.
What can you do in a minute?
If I had more time, I would ask you questions, but there's just a couple points I want to make. I was raised Catholic too. It didn't make any sense. I walked away. The way you view your son is the way God views you. Look into that. God sent his son so you could have a relationship with him, not because he wanted you to keep a bunch of rules. You don't have to get good and then get God. He sent the 10 Commandments because, yes, he would like for us to obey those rules, but he knew we couldn't. He sent them to show, this is my character. You can't do this. Therefore, you need a savior. We are human beings, not human doings. The Catholic Church says do. Jesus Christ said it is done. Look into that. Because you want to be able to put some sort of faith in your son's life, even if it's faith that there's no God, because it takes a lot of faith to believe that. And if you do believe there's life after death, and you do believe that there's one like all-powerful being, man, it's the most important thing.
Yeah, that for
you
me
to
is
look into.
If heaven and hell are real, as a parent, there is no more important. It's not getting them to Harvard.
Yep.
It's not. If heaven and hell are real, there is nothing, not even close, that can compare to setting the table so your kid can get into heaven.
That's right.
Everything else, it doesn't matter how successful you are on this earth. If you blow that one, you're a failure.
Right.
I agree. That's the reason why I've busted my ass to get him where he needs to go, because my father and I don't really we have a relationship, but it's still But I want him to be what I wasn't able to be, and I mean, I'm everything I pour into him. no matter what I do, I mean, I'm here now making extra money so you can have pizza when he gets out of here.
Amen.
Nice.
We're going to be praying for you. Howard,
Well,
you want to send
it
us
is,
off because we're
yeah.
1 minute over here.
We are 1 minute over, but we started
Sorry.
10 minutes late. So
Yeah, but we're
stick around for Happy Hour. Our buddies from Happy Hour are next. They're pretty funny. I love their stuff.
same here.
This has been Down the Rabbit Hole. Thank you for listening. To God be the glory. Great things He has done. See you next week.